Hi everyone. So I'm going to continue with this list of questions that I have that I started to do in the last video. But before I look at the questions, I've had a lot of people ask me about the sprays that I use. I have spoken about these before. A lady, her name is Emily Jane. She makes sprays specific for EMF. She has angel sprays, healing sprays, and she also makes one specific for juice. So her email is Emily Jane, that's EMILY JANE, Emily Jane 39 at gmail.com. That's Emily Jane 39 at gmail.com. So I'm being asked a lot about her sprays. So there's her email again. Do I use them? I do. I use them every day. I used them when I was in hospital. I was also sent some aromatherapy oils when I was in hospital from a lady called Nicky Kay, and she uses the doTERRA aromatherapy oils. She is in the UK. I don't know if she ships to the US. You'd have to ask her. But her website is www.mydoterra, that's mydoterra.com/Nicky Kay, NICKYKAY / I presume if you just write Nicky Kay doTERRA, doTERRA is small d, small o, capital T, capital E, capital R, capital A. If you write Nicky Kay doTERRA, I presume you would find her website. But she sent me some very pure aromatherapy oils to use when I was in hospital. But I also had the sprays by Emily Jane, and I used them in hospital every day, and I use them at home every day. I use the EMF eliminator whenever I think I might be test driving a car or driving in someone else's car or getting a taxi anywhere. I don't really need it for my own car because I'm fine with my own car. I use the angelic one and the healing one when I feel I need to. And if I think I'm going to be around juiced people, I use the juice one. And then I was sent some absolutely gorgeous oils from Mark Bajerski, and these are fantastic. And he's got oils for all different things. One's called energizing, one is called healing. So you can actually use these as oils with your carrier oil as an oil blend, or you can put the oil drops into like spring water and use them as a spray with a little spray bottle if you wanted to use them that way. Another one called Golden Heart, another one called Awakening, another one called Purifying. So these are gorgeous. And Mark Bajerski's website, I have linked that before. Just see if I can find it so I can give it to you. So as I was answering the question about these sprays, I just as well tell you these other ones that I have as well. So yeah, I mean, I just typed in Mark Bajerski on Google, Bajerski, and his website came up straight away. Mark Bajerski, Pure Energy Healing Academy, and his website is www.markbajerski.com. So yes, you could make sprays with those if you wanted to. You could just put spring water and put a few drops of the oil and make a spray that way, or you could use them as oil with your carrier oil for massage, or just to put onto the acupressure points. And I also use these little aromatherapy roll-ons from the brand Tisserand. These were a present from my sister, and she bought me Confidence, Energy, and Focus, and they're lovely as well. So yeah, just letting you know which aromatherapy oils and sprays that I use. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the questions, continuing on from the last video and going through all these questions that we have here. So first one, Magenta, one thing that is quite interesting is that for roughly 6 years, whenever my son or husband are thinking of me or talking to someone about me, my right ear becomes activated. I can only liken the sound to Morse code. I receive this just after their thoughts or conversations. We kind of make a joke of it now. I'm not sure what to make of it or if anyone else experiences this. So, right, let's have a look at my reply. I replied, I do, because I do. The clicking, you mean? It's part of tinnitus, the clicking sound, but it can be outside of that. So you can have a tinnitus type sort of noise in the ear that's always there, and then the clicking can come in and out intermittently. And sometimes it can be part of something you're picking up psychically. If someone is talking about you, that's where that sort of old wives' tale comes from. Oh, someone's talking about you, your ears are burning or your ears are going red. Sometimes on a psychic level, you can pick signals up like that. So it can be part of tinnitus. So if you do have clicking in the ears or sounds in the ears, don't just assume that it's a psychic signal. You know, get that checked out. If you want to get it checked out, you don't have to, but if you want to get that checked out, get that checked out. However, if everything is fine and there's no problem found with your ears, then absolutely it could be more of a psychic sound. And it is difficult sometimes to tell the difference between a clairaudient sound you are picking up that's coming from that sort of astral realm, if you will, that fourth dimensional field or fifth dimensional field, or even above that, or if you are actually having experiences of tinnitus. So I get that checked out to find out. But I did go on to say there is another type of clicking that occurs in the ears very early in the morning. Now, if you get that early in the morning and you only get it early in the morning, and I mean really early, then that's nothing to do with tinnitus, or it could be for you, but it usually isn't. If it's only happening at that time, this is quite different, and it's directly related to the pineal gland activation. The pineal gland is really active, and it kind of feels like it's a different kind of clicking. I get both of these, so I kind of know that they're different. The one you get with the pineal gland activation early in the morning often occurs just before astral projection takes place, out of body experience. So if you hear that clicking in the morning, be aware that the pineal gland is highly active and you are ready to go into an out of body experience at that time. And that feels more like it's a slower, I mean, it can be all different types, but for me personally, it's a slower clicking, a sort of heavier clicking, and you can almost feel the click rather than just hear it. Whereas the one that is more psychic related or tinnitus is like tiny little tappings, which is what this questioner is saying. It's like Morse code. That the Morse code is more like a psychic telepathy, that someone's talking about you or thinking about you, which is obviously what's happening with this questioner, because that's what's happening with her family members whenever they are talking about her. So that's more of a telepathic psychic thing, but that also feels the same with tinnitus. But that other clicking, you can almost feel, and it's a faster, it's a sort of heavier, slower click, and you can feel it sometimes in the neck or in the ear, and that often occurs before out of body experience. Okay, next question. Magenta, if a visual was seen in the 1980s and then it comes to actuality in 2020, then is this evident that there is no such thing as timelines and all is as it should be and as it was planned pre-incarnation and pre-26,000 year cycle? Therefore, choice is an illusion and timelines is a psy-op deception. Everything is planned and orchestrated from the highest part of each of us. We may feel we made choice B, but we were always going to make choice A? Great question, really interesting. So my reply was sort of yes, as in destiny, not a psyop. So I'm making it quite clear here that timelines is not a psyop deception. However, when it comes to destiny, yes, sort of. What is destined are the convergence node points. That's when multiple timelines, instead of running in a parallel way to one another, so you get to choose between different timelines, they converge together in a more circular or spiraling way, and they come together to a middle point, and that is the convergence node point. So that one destiny is always going to occur because it's a culmination of all of the timelines, but there are multiple different timelines to get us there, which is exactly what's happening for this planet right now. We're all going to the same destination, but there's multiple ways of getting there. This is explained far deeper in my first book, Masters of the Matrix. In fact, Masters of the Matrix is predominantly about the pre-incarnate contracts we make and the timeline convergence node points and destiny. That's really what that book is about. So if you want to know more about that subject, then read Masters of the Matrix, which you can buy on Amazon, and you can get that as a Kindle download, and it's not very expensive at all. We've kept all the books pretty cheap on Kindle so that they're accessible to everyone. So Masters of the Matrix will give you more information about that, but that is a really great question. Next question. Magenta, I don't believe that there's a reincarnational trap. Although the Earth School might be thousands of lifespans before one graduates, a trap after we die sounds like the ultimate fear and victim programming. We're here to save ourselves. Yes, we are that powerful, and we choose ourselves if we want to come back. For the soul, one reincarnation is like the blink of an eye. We will know where to go when we pass. And my response is, unfortunately, the cabal, the overlords, know how to hijack the incarnational line and have done so for a great many years. It's a very complex subject and not something I would go into here on social media, as any short post would not do this subject justice. Hence, this is covered extensively in my first book, Masters of the Matrix. So this is something else that is really covered in depth in that book. I could go into that a little bit further here. So let me just look at that again. Obviously on social media, a post isn't going to do justice to this question, which is hence the reason why that came through as that transmission was a monad and came through as a book. So I'm going to just break that down briefly. I don't believe there's a reincarnation trap. So there is a reincarnation trap. However, it isn't there for everyone. Those that are able to access the 5D, the fifth dimension, create this quantum convergence charge, blue starfire within the DNA, hold the memories, they're on a path to individualization, they're remaining cohesive, they are juice-free, very important because the juice has been designed to prevent this. Those individuals are able to rise above that reincarnational trap. So they choose to come back into reincarnation. It's a choice from that perspective, as the poster is saying. But those who can't do that, then it's automatic. They aren't able to move beyond the fourth dimension because they can't hold the quantum convergence charge and the memories. They're not able to hold that through the death experience high enough or powerful enough to move beyond the fourth dimension. So they just automatically come back in after a time, but they will come back in. So they have learned how to hijack the reincarnational line. So a reincarnation trap, although the Earth school might be thousands of lifespans, yes, before one graduates, exactly, graduation being ascension. A trap after we die sounds like the ultimate fear and victim programming. It does, doesn't it? And yes, it does sound like ultimate fear. Oh, there's a trap after you die. And it does sound like victim programming. The whole point of this is to be aware of that hijack, because the hijack is what's creating the fear and putting you in a position of being the victim. It's not the messenger, me and others, that pick this up. It's not, we're not doing the fear and victim programming. We're just passing on the message of what we see in reality. Those that created that are the ones that are working with that ultimate fear and victim, savior victim program, savior victim system, whatever you want to call it. The whole idea here is to be aware of it. That's why the messengers are bringing you this information. It's not to cause fear, and it's not to make you feel like a victim. It's to make you realize that that trapping system is there so that you can do something about it. So the idea is to change the paradigm, the lifestyle, the philosophies, change the awareness, change the cellular structure, and come into a place where you are not subject to that. And so she goes on to say, we are here to save ourselves. You could certainly put it that way. Yes, we are that powerful. We certainly are. I'm not disagreeing with this at all. We are that powerful. We are here to save ourselves, if you want to put it that way. I prefer to say we're here to move into alignment and find sovereignty and individualization, but you could say save yourselves if you want to. And we choose ourselves if we come back. You do. You absolutely do. You are right if you are able to move beyond the fourth dimension. If you have enough blue starfire or quantum convergence charge to raise up holding memory and remaining individualized, you can do that. You are that powerful. Of course you are. And you will not be subject to that trapping system. Many, well, predominantly the starseeds, the awake and aware individuals, they chose to come here to help the others that are in the trap. So the messengers are bound to pick up about the trap, because we've come here to assist those who are trapped, to teach them how to, if you will, save themselves, as you say. For the soul, one reincarnation is like the blink of an eye. You know, it isn't even as much as the blink of an eye. It is simultaneous. It's one moment. So you are correct that the blink of an eye is the quickest thing we can think of to explain that. So you're right. One reincarnation is absolutely like that from that perspective. We will know where to go when we pass. Again, if you are able to access the fifth dimension and go beyond the fourth dimension, you are taken into a memory where you know where you're going, because you remember. You have a guidance system with you as part of that infinite structure that you are, and that will assist you in where you need to go. The fourth dimension doesn't have that. Maybe at the very highest echelons as you are approaching 5D. The fourth dimension is changeable and very susceptible to hijacking. And that's what's been hijacked. So there is, if you will, a false guidance, a false light, whatever you want to call it. And the soul, the lost soul, believes they're following the right path, and they get led right back into reincarnation. So that's the trap. So when you say we will know where we go when we pass, that's true if you are able to access beyond 4D. If you cannot access beyond 4D, you won't know where to go. You can be misled. So we must understand all the different layers here. So I then go on to say, on the subject of the reincarnational trapping system, please see this interview I did with Michelle Walling back in 2017, where the question is asked, has the reincarnational trap now been put out of action? And the 9 respond to this question, as well as other excellent questions that Michelle Walling asked back then, and I asked the 9. Michelle gave me the questions ahead of time, so I gave those questions to the 9. brought the responses through. And then when I did the interview with her, I had the responses there. And the that particular, I'm just trying to find out what that's called. That particular interview, that video is on YouTube, and it is called Magenta Pixie, Starseed Wisdom and DNA Activation, The Cosmic Awakening Show. So it's an interview with Michelle Walling, and it was made back in 2017. So if you want to know more about that subject, it's in Masters of the Matrix extensively. As Masters of the Matrix, that is the core teaching. It's all to do with pre-incarnate contracts. So the trapping system comes into that. In fact, the very first time I was given the information about the trapping system was when I was bringing forward the transmission for Masters of the Matrix, but it is discussed in this interview. And Michelle asks some really good questions. So Magenta Pixie, Starseed Wisdom and DNA Activation, the Cosmic Awakening Show. Next question. Dear Magenta, I wonder if the 26,000 year cycle is a bit short to start as a photon light particle again, when going through regenesis to be a human at the next end times and Choicepoint. Is it a longer cycle for experiencing first to third density evolution and individuate as a human consciousness? And I replied on social media, it's a series of cycles moving together. The grand cycle can take billions of years from Genesis seeding on a planetary level. 26,000 years is a memory pattern cycle as well as a galactic cycle. I would need to bring the 9 in for more information on that. So when I'm looking at the question again, when this questioner is saying you're starting as a photon light particle and going through regenesis to be a human at the next end times. So she's seeing this in a linear way. So from a photon light particle, the very first creation of a soul, right through to ascension as a human, how could that possibly take place in 26,000 years? And that's correct. It isn't linear like that, but the cycles of ascension are 26,000 years in sections as they go through this sort of spiraling evolution. So I said would need to bring the 9 in for more information on that. So I did ask the 9, and this is what they said. These are indeed multiple cycles occurring simultaneously. The memory trigger as memory pattern cycle is always presented at end times as 26,000 years, along with 144,000 warriors of light and Nibiru, and that's spelt Ni-bi-ru, known as planet Nibiru or the Nibiruan dimension. These are profound memory triggers that flash a remembrance code within the mind consciousness of the individual, reminding that individual of the promise, the contract, the mission, and the pitfalls and hijacks in place. Both 26,000 and 144,000 are reset points, and Nibiru is the presentation of new beginning, the start of a new cycle on a new planet, and that is part of the program that is Lazarene, that you may know of in your story of Lazarus. So if you look to the story of Lazarus, then that will show you what the Lazarene is. It's a metaphoric story of Lazarus that shows you what is meant by the Lazarene program, which is a reset, a cosmic reset, a new beginning. It is not translated into the Great Reset, which is the hijack and the inversion of. That's exactly what the Great Reset is. It is the inversion of the cosmic reset, which is the Lazarene, and 26,000, 144,000, and Nibiru are codes for memory, very important codes for memory. So when you get to hear about the 26,000 year cycle, the 144,000 light workers or warriors of light Nibiru or Nibiruan on the Nibiru planet. These are memory triggers to wake you up. That doesn't mean they're not actually galactic cycles or astrological cycles, or that they're not somehow present in the physical, like a planet or planetoid or group of planets. But they are, in and of themselves, memory triggers, as the 9 have just explained. So, next question. Magenta, when I was taught from an extraterrestrial guide 30 years ago, I was told that in an old time of Earth, when she was young, the extraterrestrial guide, starseeds from all over the cosmos came to experience life on Earth, here on Earth. They could go in and out in all life structures as stones, plants, animals, to experience matter. They could leave when they wanted. In that time, they knew they came from Source, and therefore they honored Earth. When Earth was occupied and enslaved, the karmic wheel started and the so-called traps were installed. They lost their freedom and they had to go through death and reincarnation instead. The starseeds forgot where they came from and they had to relearn it. So this is someone who was told this from an extraterrestrial guide 30 years ago. My reply is, yes, this is all correct. And I feel you are predominantly speaking of Lemuria. These free souls were the original organic humans. That is who we all were, which is why we all have a connection to Lemuria. The awakened souls, the starseeds, here now, chose to incarnate, knowing it was a trapping system and a hijack, in order to collectively work as a telepathic group to free the trapped human souls and return Earth to her former glory, so she may ascend into her higher aspect, Gaia. So that was my reply, which corroborates what I just said earlier about why the starseeds incarnated. And I'm pretty sure that question is also in the interview with Michelle Walling as well. Okay, next question. Magenta, I have a strong urge to learn Welsh as I live in Wales and I didn't pay any attention to it at all. Am I wasting my time, as in an ascended future, we will all be telepathic and we'll all speak the same language? My reply, no, you are not wasting your time. Telepathy at the level you speak of is going to take quite some time. The ancient languages hold codes for DNA cellular memory, not just for you, but for the receptive ones you speak the language to. If you are drawn to learn any language, then that is your calling at this point. So anyone who feels they're being called to do something, but they are wanting to not do that because they're thinking, well, when ascension occurs, it's all going to be different. So what's the point of doing that? Be aware that you are looking at 3D reality and multidimensional reality, and you can bring the two together and make everything you do within the third dimension part of that experience of the fifth dimensional reality. The missions merge together. Your life, hobbies, or job, if you will, become your spiritual calling. So there's another question about this a little bit later on, which I will get to. But to the person who asked that question, if you have a strong urge to learn Welsh, that's your calling. Go ahead and learn it, because there may be a reason why you need to learn that language. Okay, next question. Magenta, can you please explain why inflation is rising so dramatically? And my reply was, this is all part of the agenda. We are entering the time of multiple things happening at once. All activated starseeds have the tools they need to navigate through this. The waves are calm waters 1 minute and tumultuous tidal waves the next. Sine waves, in truth. The activated starseeds hold the surfboard within, complete with the guidebook on how to surf. So I'm using metaphor here to explain how to get through these patterns and waves. The higher the waves, the more awakening occurs, such as the solstice. eclipse, and the more amplification and power for Stargate ascension. So we merge with our environmental reality at these high energy point times, and they are convergence node points, as I was talking about in the previous question. The solstice is a collective convergence node point. So important to know that. One major tip for using that surfboard is this: do not be in resistance to the reality you experience, whilst at the same time stand in sovereignty. Say no more as you make that warrior's cry for freedom, without losing your understanding that others are calling for what you do not want and what you do not need. So be aware, others are calling for what you don't want and what you don't need. They are making the call. Let them make the call. You can't prevent them from making the call. You stand in sovereignty and work with your own call. Understand the grand cosmic plan as well as the dark agenda, and your surfboard shall transform from lead into gold. Alchemy takes place within the body, at DNA cellular level, within the mind, within the energetic system. That's what happens. We are all becoming alchemists. So yes, that's metaphoric, contains codes, memory codes for awareness. Didn't really touch on inflation specifically, other than it's part of the agenda. It's something that's being created. Now, what I can say to you about that particular agenda is it's almost like a double hijack on both ways. So they are hijacking by creating inflation through scarcity and through either real or pretend false supply chain issues. But coming back towards them is an awareness of the hijack before it came. So they were putting out, we have to tell you what we are doing in order to work with their dark magic. But by the time they put that out for this particular agenda, there's so many awakened souls that they've moved into a place of being able to be prepared. So what I'm saying is that particular agenda to do with inflation, whilst the inflation is occurring and that particular agenda is taking place and the supply chain issues are all in the pipeline, there's such a lot of energy counteracting this that whatever they try to do on this front, it isn't going to be what they wanted. It's exactly the same with the kooky roo-roo. It was intended to be much larger than it actually was. And it's the same with this particular agenda, inflation. It's meant to be worse than it actually is. Now, there's other stuff going on as well, which I do not understand because I am not particularly financially minded. But what I can tell you is it's something to do with stocks, and it's something to do with the stock exchange, the supply of goods, and what happens when people sell and buy shares. I do not understand that. Please don't ask me questions on, I just have no clue. But there's something going on in there, coming in, if you will, from Alliance White Hat infiltration. So it's a double hijack. It's kind of like they've set the agenda, and the agenda has become a negative thing for them in a way, because it's backfiring, if you will, because this White Hat Alliance, and when I say White Hat Alliance, I'm not necessarily talking about Mrs. Millie Terry. I'm talking about awake and aware individuals who are awake and aware and patriotic and are aware of the situation, who work in this selling shares and stocks and everything, the stock market. They work in there some way. That is somehow helping, this counteracting force, if you will. So I wish I could tell you more, but I don't really understand the financial terms to use. But I just see that happening there. Whether we'll hear about that in our mainstream news. I have no idea, but there is something going on in that area that the overlord structure wouldn't want. And it's because they released what they were doing before time, and there's been a preparedness. I mean, awake and aware individuals are preparing already and have been for a long time, but not just with the supply of goods they might need, but with this whole stock shares and inflation thing. So the inflation is not at the level that they wanted it to be at, even though it seems to us as though it's just rising and rising. So it's not as bad as it is in other timelines, basically, is what I'm saying here. Okay, next question. And this is related to the asking about learning a language. This is a similar question, but about something else. Magenta, I keep wondering about a few things. Would getting a mortgage be a waste of time? What about starting a business? What about paying into a pension fund? Saving money in the banks? Buying land? What about buying a van if there's going to be no fuel? If everything is going to collapse and crumble, will all these kind of things become obsolete and just disappear? It's difficult to decide what moves to make at the moment, and it feels a bit like some kind of strange limbo. And my reply here is, none of these things could happen in the way we expect, as the timelines are in flux. Nothing is set. We are on the precipice of great change, and you are correct that it is a kind of limbo, although it is psychologically important not to see it that way. So continue to make decisions, even though you cannot plan as you did in the old world prior to the equinox March 2020. Trusting your intuition, guidance, and synchronicity is the way forward. So what I'm saying here is work with real time as we go. Be prepared, yes, but to actually think, well, this is going to collapse and crumble. We don't know how it's going to collapse and crumble. We don't know if the new structure will be built before the collapse and crumble. We don't know if that particular structure will collapse and crumble and be rebuilt. It's like, how does that occur? There are still multiple surprises coming our way. Despite our awareness and preparedness of what is coming, we can't see everything that is coming our way. Now, what I would say here is, with the question, it's difficult to decide what moves to make at the moment. And that's true. And I'm just going to say, from the higher perspective, that's the whole point. So here in 3D, this is an attempted takeover of the village. Okay, that's what this is in 3D. It's a hijack. But from the higher perspective, there's a reason for everything. So we're looking at two different reasons as to why these things are happening, which gets confusing when people say things like the white hats are in control. Well, that's not true from a third dimensional perspective. It is true from a higher dimensional perspective. So it depends what you mean when you say that statement. So, and it is becoming more true from a third dimensional perspective, as all this year has been 50-50. So neither side is in control and hasn't been since the start of 2022. So it's difficult to decide what moves to make at the moment. So from the higher perspective, that's the whole point. We are in that computer game that I was talking about in the last video. So we've created this computer game and we thought, right, we're going to give ourselves all these challenges and we're going to put this in and this in and this in and this in. And then in our little avatar, we're not going to know what move to make, and we're going to have to figure that out. And that's the awakening, figuring it all out, deciding what to do, balancing this situation with this situation, working with our knowledge on a third dimensional level, a fourth dimensional level, and a multidimensional level, to make the decision and then make the choice. These are, if you will, mini choice points all around us. Obviously, we know the juice is one great big huge choice point for everybody, but there are others. And so Finding it challenging to decide what moves to make at the moment is the whole point from the higher perspective, because that is what gives us our ability to exercise our free will and move into destiny. So trusting your intuition, guidance, and synchronicity is the way forward. So somebody else then asked a further question about this, about the reply, where I say, although it's psychologically important not to see it that way, as in not to see it as limbo, so continue to make decisions, even though you cannot plan as you did in the old world prior to the equinox March 2020. And so someone has said, I'm intrigued about this part. Continue to make decisions, even though you cannot plan as you did in the old world prior to the equinox March 2020. What does that mean, please? And this is my reply. It's impossible to plan anything right now, as things can change at a moment's notice without warning. We entered a new reality in March 2020, around the point of the March equinox. That was day one of a totally new world. March equinox 2020 was day one of a totally new world. I was told that on that day. The nine actually said to me, this is day one of a completely new world, and you are never going back. The old world has finished and you are now in the new world. So that was the huge sort of transitional point from one reality to another. It was the March equinox 2020. We must make decisions, for that is the antidote to limbo. Staying in limbo is psychologically draining and possibly harmful long-term. Hence, make decisions. You are not in limbo when you make a decision of any kind. So make decisions. Can be something as simple as what to eat for breakfast, but do it, know it, and be aware of it. Planning can still occur, but be aware of the any minute things can change. So you are not disappointed if, when they do change. That is your golden surfboard. So I spoke earlier about the surfing of the waves. That's your golden surfboard. So if you're in limbo, it's like, well, I don't know whether to get a mortgage or open a business or put money in the bank or do this or do that. I don't know what to do. I'm so confused. I don't know what to do. If you stay in that place, you are in limbo, just not making a decision, not knowing what to do. That is psychologically draining when it goes on and on and on. It's okay to be in limbo for a short amount of time. That's normal. But when you are constantly not knowing what to do, that can become psychologically draining and possibly harmful if it goes on a long time. When you make a decision, that takes limbo away because you've taken control of the situation. So what you can say is, I'm going to make the decision right now to make no decision about this job or this relationship or putting money in the bank or whatever it is you think you want to do. I'm not going to make any decisions about that one thing, but today I'm going to have for breakfast this particular meal. I'm going to do some food planning. I'm going to do some meal prep. I'm going to read that book and that book. I'm going to go to a certain place next week and do this. Make the decisions, even if they're small decisions, because that takes you out of limbo. Even if you can't make any of these bigger decisions, you can make a decision to make no decision. And as long as you do that, I'm deciding to make no decision right now. It brings you back to your own empowerment rather than being lost without anchor or floating on a surfboard without actually standing up and riding the waves, as I'm using that metaphor. Okay, next question. Magenta is the recent spike in Mr. Happy Thai Tuss in young small fae in the UK domain connected to the juice. So I'm going to say that again. Magenta is the recent spike in Mr. Happy Thai Tuss in young fae in the UK domain connected to the juice. Okay, I hope you've worked that out. If you haven't, then just go back and listen to it again. We're talking about Mr. Happy Tie Tuss. Okay, my reply, no idea, sorry. However, in the novel, the juiced Fae give off a distorted bioelectric rogue signal after munching on the bad apples. Then they prepare their kids' food, they bath them, they dress them, they kiss them, etc., etc., etc. And then those same young Fae are bombarded by Granny Fairy, Auntie Pixie, and the gnome teachers at the village educational hut. This is the rogue signal glorious guidance structure have been talking about, and the black flame as shield. This can result in multiple different dis-ease within those close to the apple eaters, especially the smaller and more sensitive Fae. So the answer to the question about Mr. Happy is in that. Basically, it's being around those who've had the juice is the reason. Okay, next question. Hi, Magenta, thanks for all you do. Thank you. I really appreciate your work. Thank you very much. I have a question relating to working with the black flame. I seem to get a migraine, or is it migraine, whenever I've been in close proximity to the juiced, unless I use the black flame along with black crystals, etc. This is fine when I'm around people I don't need to connect with. However, I have clients, and this is hypnosis clients, who are juiced, and I need to connect with them to build rapport and trust to facilitate their healing journey. I've noticed using the black flame inhibits a deeper connection, which I suppose makes sense because we choose not to radiate our energy when the black flame is activated. If I don't activate the black flame with clients, I get a migraine. So I'm wondering how to work with the black flame to protect myself, but still connect with clients on a deep level to do the work with integrity. I also wish to remain connected to juiced family and friends. So is it possible to do both? Or is it simply about setting an intention to connect with the person's higher self while the black flame is activated? Okay, so here's my reply. The black flame work is to protect you. It's your shield. How you choose to use it or how far you choose to connect with your clients is your choice. It is possible to work deeply with them while using the black flame, but you may come up against resistance as you are working with a subconscious AI system in the juiced client. The AI consciousness will not like the black flame. It's trying to merge with you. That's its programming. The black flame is designed to inhibit deeper working. That is the whole idea. So you do not map their AI frequency and merge with the AI. If you choose to work unshielded, you could open yourself to all kinds of different reactions, not just migraine. Also, the juice itself prevents deep work, although that might not be the case for every client. And you also cannot be 100% sure that everything you are told from the client's higher self is accurate because they are compromised. I wish you luck in your choices as to how to work with your clients. Some energy workers have had to shut down their practices entirely due to such deep interaction and connection with the juicy and subsequent reactions. My advice to you, and I don't really like giving advice necessarily, but my advice to you is if you are going to continue to work with the juiced, then use the black flame at all times. So that does mean that that deeper connection is inhibited. Unfortunately, it is a conundrum, but that's the situation. The decision as to how to proceed must be yours. Okay, so that's the response to that question. Next question. Hi, Magenta. What is the probability of a timeline where a cure is available for the juiced? Thank you. Okay, my reply. Probability is high for it becoming available, but low at the moment for it being utilized. I'll say that again. Probability is high for a cure becoming available, but low for now for it being utilized. Something needs to shift within the mass consciousness before the juiced would willingly accept any kind of cure. We're not on that trajectory at this present time. The choice point is still in place on this planet. Because of this, it is showing in the timelines as low probability for willingly taking a cure. Also, the cure would need to be multidimensional. So some spiritual understanding or practice would need to be in place before this could be fully utilized. Also, the service to self would attempt to hijack any cure with a cure of their own, as in another choice point. Yet there will be those who will accept and benefit from a genuine cure. Ascension would still be off the cards for the great majority, but living a healthy, long life could still be available for those who choose. And then the next question carries on from that. Magenta, when you say ascension would be off the cards for the great majority, does that then mean that there'll be a minority, a few exceptions? So perhaps in a family of unjuiced, all ascending, there might be one juiced member. Would the rest of the family have the ability to pull the juiced member up with them, with that individual's permission? Great question. It's kind of been touched on already, but let's look at my reply. It's not about that family pulling the juiced individual up with them. It's about the juiced person's ability to deeply commit to the spiritual path, surrender to the ascension process, stand in sovereignty, learn from the choice point they took, and intensively detox on all levels. Yes, there will be a very rare few that can do this and still ascend. And this is explained in depth in recent videos on the juice, regenesis, and ascension. So that part I have been looked into already before. But the bit about the family pulling the juiced up with them, it's all about the juiced person's ability. Then the family can help them and pull them up energetically, but they must make the commitment to the spiritual path, the surrender to the ascension process, the standing in sovereignty, the learning from the choice point, intensive detox, and saying no to further juice choice points. All that must take place first before they then open up a receptivity to the rest of the family helping and pulling them up. Okay, this is a really good question, this next one. Magenta, I'm wondering if you've spoken about service to self individuals choosing to refuse the juice. I know a couple of service to self individuals, one whom I know for sure is pretty extremely negatively polarized, who has refused the juice. They also seem to be aware to some degree of the Overlord's agenda, and they're refusing to partake in that as well. Although I love to hold the possibility, I don't believe these individuals will become service to others or positively ascend in this lifetime. Is this just a glitch in the matrix that they've refused the juice, or does it somehow also affect the negative polarization in a non-desirable way? Okay, really good question. Okay, here's my reply. Hi there. You might know individuals who hold low service to others positive energy, but truly polarized service to self individuals, negatively polarized service to self individuals, would not mix with service to others individuals. They don't need to refuse the juice. There's no question of them taking it ever. They don't have a choice point because they're not on an ascension path, not like us anyway. Their choices are too deep and complex for this forum, would need to be a book chapter to explain that one, or a video. So basically they don't have a choice point because they're not on an ascension path like us. The individuals you're talking about, the ones with low service to others, positive energy, will still have opportunities for ascension if they are juice free, as long as their positive frequency overrides the negative. They don't need to be fully polarized for ascension, but they would not be able to go through Stargate ascension, but they still could go through ascension, and they would be one of the individuals riding on the back of someone else's dragon or jumping into the basket of someone else's hot air balloon, as I used that as a metaphor in the last video. Okay, so that was the reply there. So this person obviously knows some individuals who are of low positive polarization, and she has interpreted them as being extremely negatively polarized in service to self. But that person is not that. They don't mix with service to others individuals. Sometimes there will be some that are on the pathway of service to self who will mix with service to others individuals in the case of what we know as the state that is deep. The individuals within the state that is deep are on the path of service to self or are minions for service to self overlords, but they're not polarized negative. A fully extremely polarized negative individual would not even, probably wouldn't be on the surface of this planet very often. They are elsewhere. And they don't mix with service to others individuals. They don't have this choice point, and they wouldn't refuse the juice, and they would never even consider taking the juice. They don't consider it as something for them. They created it for others, for, you know, us, if you will. Okay, next question, and it's related. Magenta, are sociopaths the kind that are born that way, not created through trauma? Are they not service to self? They have no empathy. They show signs from an extremely early age. Is this not service to self, manifesting outside of the bloodlines? And my reply, yes, they are on the negative path, as in negative outweighing the positive. But it's extremely unlikely they would be fully polarized negative and service to self. They train from birth for this. So anyone wanting to polarize fully in the negative will train from birth for this, or will have that training chosen for them. Any likely candidate for the negative path would be picked up by the service to self family. Very, very rare cases of highly negative souls living outside the bloodlines, the family, but without the training, they probably would not polarize negative. If they did, they wouldn't mix in public either. Just being a sociopath is not enough for full polarization. And this person goes on to ask another question related. Thank you, Magenta. But I'm specifically speaking about people who enact negative, sorry, I'm translating the question here, enact negative behaviors towards baby Faye for their own benefit. And narcissists, psychopaths, the kind of people who enjoy causing harm or hurt to others and feed off service to others individuals, those who commit negative acts towards baby Faye, etc., who only care about power and control and feeding off the pain of anyone they can. I considered these individuals to be service to self. And my reply is, I know the type of individuals you mean, but using the model the 9 teach me, they would not be polarized service to self. They would be predominantly negative individuals, but they still wouldn't be polarized. They're not who the 9 refer to when they reference service to self. When the 9 reference service to self, they're talking about the dark magicians, and these are part of that structure. They're not individuals who do these things outside of the bloodlines. Yes, they're negative individuals, but they're not polarized. They're in that polarization, but they haven't got enough negativity yet to polarize. And the only way they can do that is by being born into that structure and being trained from birth. So I hope that's clarified some confusions regarding what the 9 mean when they say service to self. Now, other spiritual teachers might say negative or service to self, and they might be referring to the individuals that you're talking about, but that's not who the 9 mean when they talk about them. Next question. Magenta, you said, if I remember correctly, if one twin flame is unjuiced and they're both on the ascension path, then the unjuiced partner will help the juiced partner with their ascension. My reply, this is true, but that does not mean the juiced partner will automatically ascend. They must make the commitment to the spiritual path themselves and do intense detox. So this is just like the family member, the question earlier about the family member, would the other family members bring them up? It's the same with the twin flame couple as well. They must make the commitment to the spiritual path themselves and do the intense detox. The main issue here is sovereignty, and that means not caving in to manipulation or pressure. And that's such a huge issue that people just don't seem to understand. If you give in to manipulation or pressure, you are not in sovereignty. You have given into manipulation. You've given into pressure. That isn't sovereign. You can become sovereign afterwards by realizing that you made a choice or went through an act that wasn't sovereign, and you could think, never again will I do that. That's part of your commitment. And it may be that you do go on and be one of those rare few that ascend. But you cannot be sovereign if you give in to manipulation or pressure. It's a challenge, I know. But when sovereignty is truly in place, then nothing will ever make that individual concede. Nothing will ever make that individual concede. That is sovereignty, and that is what is needed for ascension. For those who took the juice, knowing the consequences, then ascension is even less likely for those individuals because they let go of what sovereignty they had. Those who are likely to ascend are those who discover the truth after taking the juice and then commit to ascension. Not saying it can't be done for an individual who took the juice knowing the consequences, but it's much, much more difficult because you already had sovereignty. You already knew it was a manipulation. You knew you were being manipulated and you still allowed the manipulation anyway. That is going to make it more difficult for you to ascend than someone who took the juice thinking they were doing the right thing, thinking they were doing a good thing for themselves and for humanity. That's the hijack, yes, but there's an innocence there. So when they discover afterwards, oh my goodness me, that I can't believe the truth, they are the ones that are more likely to ascend than the ones that knew the truth in the first place and still went ahead and did that. But I have said that's not to say that they can't ascend, but it's more difficult for them. Karma is, it's kind of like having 2 children, right? So you've got a 2-year-old and a 10-year-old. And they both do the same silly thing, right? They're both naughty and they both do something very silly. Are you going to discipline your 2-year-old in the same way that you are going to discipline your 10-year-old? Of course not. Your 2-year-old is 2. It's a baby. The 10-year-old knew better. This is why the oldest child in the family always has this kind of issue with being the oldest. I know because I was the oldest, because they get blamed for everything. That's because they're the oldest. They are expected to set an example to the younger children. And that's putting a lot on a child's shoulders, but that's what parents often do. And certainly how my parents were with me. I was always getting told off and told I should be setting an example to my younger brother and sister. The point here is that the person who already knew about that hijack is the 10-year-old. The person who didn't know that that was a hijack and thought they were doing a good thing is a 2-year-old. So the karma coming in on that is different. When I say karma, I mean the energetic consequence of the choice. So, okay, next question. Magenta, I'm wondering what happens to those who are unjuiced, but not awake or aware, or even open to ascension? Would they ascend with the New Earth 5D timeline if they're unjuiced for reasons of their choice, of the choice they made? My reply, depends on their level of positive and negative frequency. They do not need to believe in anything spiritual to ascend. So this is a big one. People think you have to be aware of ascension. You have to believe in ascended masters. You have to believe in angels. You have to channel. You have to meditate. You have to do yoga. You don't have to do any of those things. You can be a complete atheist. You could still ascend. It would be, I guess, seen from their perspective as maybe evolving, or perhaps expanding their mind. I mean, I'm not sure what term they would use, but using ascension to explain this complete transformation of the human self, that can happen without you being aware that it's happening, because it's about your frequency, your words, thoughts, actions, and deeds. That is what creates ascension, and you don't have to even know about it. Okay, next question. So if I understand correctly, it would not be a cure that would completely remove the choice point. So this person's asking, would a cure completely remove the choice point? And they're saying, if I understand correctly, it would not be a cure that would remove the choice point. And my reply to this was just one sentence. The choice point will no longer present when it is no longer needed or requested. So it's not about a cure removing the choice point. The hijack is still in place. If a cure came in, there would be a move from that side of the chessboard. You know, we have the one chess player coming in with their cure, that's their chess move. The other player on the chessboard is going to come in with their move, which could be another choice point, a different choice point. That's how it's being played at the moment. So it isn't a cure that will remove the choice point. That's just one move on the chessboard. The choice point will no longer present when it's no longer needed or requested. Right now, it's there. It's being requested and it's needed. From the higher perspective, this is what is being delivered to humanity, even though it's a hijack on the third dimensional point of view. Who is requesting this? And that's the individuals who are going through this experience. If you move into a choice point, you are requesting that. You are asking to have that choice point. Okay, next question. Magenta, will spirituality become more accepted by those who haven't taken the juice but are not spiritually awake yet? As in, will spirituality be more in the mainstream awareness? And my reply, the agenda behind the juice program is to shut down activation and prevent ascension. And at the same time, the spiritual truths that lead to enlightenment are hijacked. It really depends how the juiced individuals are able to break through the new set of genetic instructions they now have within their consciousness, and if they can align with true spirituality as opposed to the hijacked version. However, the great awakening amongst the juice-free is profound. So the question was about the juice-free, those who haven't taken the juice but are not spiritually awake. And my answer was the great awakening amongst the juice-free is profound. So the great awakening is taking place amongst them. Will it become more accepted? Well, yes, because they're going to be going through a great awakening, depending on how they go through that awakening. They might awaken in a non-spiritual sense. As I've said before, you don't need to be spiritually aware to ascend. And the as in, will it be more in the mainstream awareness? And I didn't really answer that, did I? The great awakening amongst the juice-free is profound. So will it be more in the mainstream awareness? You know, I'm not sure, actually. And what I will say is that mainstream awareness, the potential for it becoming more mainstream, the spirituality is there. But because the mainstream form of delivery is the the news broadcasting, and because that is so controlled, it's keeping it down. So if that system, that media system, wasn't controlled, it would already be in the mainstream awareness now, much more than we are seeing. So really, I think the question that's being asked is, will the mainstream media collapse? The answer is yes, but it's happening in increments. It's all happening at the same time as the awakening, and it's not sort of imminent, if you will, but it's there. Little things occur over time. So eventually, it will be more in mainstream awareness. Outside of that media structure, it already is there and is growing. And the Great Awakening amongst Juice Free is profound because they're free to be receptive to that, because they haven't got that AI shutting down that ability to think that way. It's not changed their consciousness into a different form. It's not putting different programming into their DNA. They're remaining organic. So yes, from that point of view. Now, somebody then made a statement as a, if you will, a magical act or a spell in the group. And the person said, Magenta, the choice point is hereby no longer needed or requested. Let it be so. In response to my reply, the choice point will no longer present when it's no longer needed or requested. And this person said, the choice point is hereby no longer needed or requested. Let it be so. And I replied, for you, yes. And for us in this group, within the awakening starseeds, yes. However, it is still needed and requested by others. We would do them a disservice by taking away their right to not know truth. They are calling for this. They are choosing it. We can't just make a statement magically and say it's no longer needed. It is needed, not by the starseeds, not by the person who made this spell. It's worked for her, it's worked for all the starseeds, but they are calling for this. And they are literally calling for it. It isn't just a spiritual, energetic calling. They're actually saying, give us a solution to this problem. Oh, thank you. This juice is the solution. This is what I want. They are rejecting those who are trying to say to them, this is not a good thing for you. This is a hijack or whatever. They reject that. Therefore, it's needed and requested from that perspective. And you can't just wipe that out by making a statement. You can do it for yourself. You can do it for other receptive, awake individuals. You can make that statement, but we already made our choice. And the choice point is not something that the spiritually aware don't want either. When it comes to making a choice at end times, will you choose ascension? Well, we want that choice so that we can therefore say, yes, we will choose ascension. So the choice is just as profound for those who don't choose the juice as those who do choose the juice, because we get to choose ascension from this perspective. If we didn't have the choice point, we wouldn't be able to make the choice. The choice point is there for those who want to choose ascension from that multidimensional point of view. Obviously, for many awakened individuals, they fully chose and surrendered to ascension years ago in their physical reality, some in teenage years and right back to childhood. But that choice point makes it tangible for those last final individuals who haven't yet chosen ascension. It gives them the choice at that intrinsic level when it comes to their cellular memory that knows what they're doing, even if their awareness does not. So you'd be doing a disservice to those who are choosing to exercise their right to not know truth. And you'd also be taking away the choice for those who need to choose ascension. So taking the choice point away at the moment isn't necessarily in the best interests from a spiritual point of view. Actually, removing the hijack, absolutely. So we could change that statement and say, hijacks are no longer needed or requested. But for the sleeping population, they are calling for hijacks as well. If you look at the way that they are acting within all of this, and the way that they've behaved since 2020, you can actually see in the population that they're calling for this hijack, which is why the hijacks are going ahead, because they are asking for it, even though their asking for it is actually the result of a hijack in the first place. So yes, I understand why this person is making that statement, but it isn't quite so easy to make a statement for an entire collective of individuals. And I know that there are many spiritual teachers out there that have attempted to do that by making a statement that this won't harm you, or you can transmute it, or it's no longer a bad thing, or even going so far as to say it's been changed and it's now going to help you. That's all just wishful thinking. There's no weight behind that on a global level at this point. I understand the intention, there's weight behind the intention, but that's not the way to go about it, because that is taking you away from your core, because it's you reacting to your emotional negative feelings regarding the individuals that are being hijacked. You're wanting to come in and save them. That's what you're trying to do when you're finding all of these ways to try and assume that the juice is not really a threat, or don't worry, it's not that bad, we can transmute it, we can ascend with it, blah blah blah. You bring yourself back to the core and you see things objectively and you realize it's a hijack. And the only way I'm going to help these people is by recognizing that and staying in sovereignty, choosing to not partake myself, but also choosing not to allow my own emotions to be pulled into negative reactions regarding others being hijacked. They've made that choice. And so that's where we must be. That's our sovereignty. If we do anything else, we move away from our sovereignty. Okay, next question. Magenta, I've been pondering this for a few days now. There are many places in the world that have a low percentage of juice drinkers. The offering of the juice not being an option for many, does that mean some have a different choice point? Or that the choice point is not needed for these souls, perhaps just based on an amount of positive charge held? My reply: the choice point is presented for every soul except fully negatively polarized service to self souls who have a different choice. So regardless of there being areas in the world that have a low percentage of juice drinkers, or the fact that there's no offering of the juice because there's no option for that, from the higher perspective, every soul has had the same choice point. If synchronicity has taken them into being born into a place or living in a place where the juice is a low option, that's just part of the choice point. They've chosen to ascend because they're bypassing the choice point. The choice point's presented for every single soul. Next question. Magenta, this is a wild concept to me, as in ascension living side by side. I think this person means you're ascending and you're living side by side with someone who's not. I think that's what this questioner means. I guess in some ways this is already happening. So this is a statement really. And I replied, yes, it's definitely already happening. So I am assuming that this person means you're ascending, living side by side with those that are not. Yes, it's definitely already happening. You will notice you will begin to disappear to others who are still in the third dimension. At first, psychologically, then emotionally and spiritually, and finally, physically, if you so choose. So I'm talking here about a pathway into invisibility from their perspective. So at first, psychologically, you will disappear to them. They just won't see you psychologically. They won't understand you. They won't hear you. They won't acknowledge you. You become sort of psychologically invisible. Then emotionally, as in they can't emotionally connect with you. They don't understand when you display emotion. you've become emotionally invisible to them. There's no feeling there from them to you. Spiritually, they don't see who you are on that spiritual level from a spiritual perspective. And finally, physically, if you so choose. So what the 9 have said to me is there will come a time when individuals will be able to choose if they want to actually be physically invisible to others. It's not that they turn invisible, it's that they simply will not be physically seen by other individuals. I don't know how that happens or when it happens, but that's something in the pathway of those who are ascending. Next question, Magenta, can someone be awake, know about what is happening in the world, and be living in the 3rd dimension? Can someone be awake and know what is happening in the world and be living in 3D? My reply, not really. Knowing about what is happening in the world and being awake makes you 4D by default. However, they can live in a 3D reality, yes. Okay, and this is a post I made. So this isn't a question, and I'll finish on this last post. I made this post on my social media platforms, and it's a little excerpt from the fictional novel. In the fictional novel, in the village, if Mummy Fairy cannot feed her baby fairy, then there is a formula type replacement for the baby fairies. But then one day, this evil overlord took all the baby formula out of the village and replaced it with his own formula, made within the deep, dark depths of the Overlord den. Before this happened, Gloria Love told all her friends with baby Faye to stock up on formula they use so they wouldn't be forced to use the Overlord's formula. The healthy Starseed baby Faye in the village were born to unjuiced parents and they were fed by their mummies. But if for any reason mummy cannot feed them, then stocking up is advised for all friends and family with little ones before the naughty formula fills the village store shelf. So that's a post I made, just putting out what I'm picking up in the fictional novel. And so letting individuals know part of the Overlord's agenda in the novel is to make some naughty formula. You are not going to want to give the naughty formula to the baby Faye. So make sure that you stock up. And I am aware that there are also some nutritional adepts and doctors out there, awake and aware individuals, that are presenting with alternative formulas that can be created. So, you know, if you're in the village, then have a think about this and work out the best way forward for you and for your baby. If you can feed like the fairies can feed their baby Faye, if you can feed yourself, then that's the best thing to do. And if you can't feed, or you choose not to for whatever reason, then have a think about what's coming and what's part of the agenda. Now, what's the probability of this agenda? I personally do not see the probability of this agenda being worldwide. I do not see this being global, but I see it occurring somewhere. I'm not sure where at this point. It could be in multiple places, but I'm not seeing it being global. Either way, as I don't know where the place is, then my advice to all mummies is to just, you know, become prepared for this. That's all I'm saying. And you probably already know about this anyway, but this did come through from the 9 as an alert to individuals with babies, you know, the awake and aware individuals. Okay, I think I'll end this video there because I've answered quite a lot of questions there. And then I will just come back to these questions for a later video. So thank you very much for listening to me today, and I will speak to you all again soon. Bye.